Back
All
from
right.
the dead. I'll run that back. With me today, back from the dead, making his bold and valiant return to podcasting, is the host of the 21 CD podcast, John. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. I'd say this is maybe one of the more sporadic podcasts I've done because we just talked for the first time a couple of days
Mm,
ago, and we'll just I'll just tell everybody kind of why I reached out. I remember you from your podcast,
hmm
and you've been on hiatus, and I know about you from like Tony Merkel. So I used to listen to your show and everything, and I think you put your last episode out in February,
hmm
and you've just kind of went ghost since then. And I'm sure you have your reasons, but I reached out to see if you wanted to, break the silence. And to my surprise, you hit me right back and you said, "Hey, I'm coming back to podcasting like next week."
Yeah.
So I was like, "All right." It's like I sent you that message and you're like, "Yeah, I'm about to come back, bro." And then that night you announced your return on Instagram. So it's like kind of providential that I caught you when I did, I feel like. So, you know,
Oh, I 100% agree because the reason I hit you back so fast because usually I get these weird messages all the time on Instagram, and I don't read all of them, but I was editing a flyer for 21 CD and how I was coming back, and at that moment I got a little blip that you were messaging me, so I opened it up and I saw that, and I was like, this definitely feels very coincidental or something else. So I was like, I got to do this because another thing too. This is my first interview on another podcast besides Tony Merkel's. So I actually haven't done this for other podcasters, mainly because I don't know, I didn't really feel like I had anything to say.
you're
Super
a lone
important.
wolf, man. I think like that's okay. I think that you work well that way. I mean, I I'm honored that you'd come on here for sure.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to try this and do something new because this next wave of my podcast episodes, I'm leaning into some heavier stuff, and I feel like maybe now I've found my voice a little bit, and I'm ready to actually, if other people want to speak to me, maybe I do have something to say that they want to hear. I don't know. I don't. Who knows?
Well, I think you have something to say. I mean, I definitely reached out to you with that in mind because I did listen to your show, and I personally I feel like you definitely have something to say, and you said it well on your show. And like what you just said there about getting into heavier stuff, I can't
Mm-hmm.
even imagine what you mean by that, because I mean you went pretty hard, man. Like you were already on some heavy stuff in my book. So I'm kind of excited to see what you're talking about.
Well, I've got one of the things that I initially came out swinging heavy with was my NPC theory, which I haven't really heard discussed about in the same way by any other podcaster or YouTuber. And I think a lot of people were kind of shook by that, how I talked about the potential for what I call an imposter race, which is basically this idea that there is a whole collection of humanity, and it's basically it's everybody. It's everybody everywhere has some sort of sickness in them, and this is part of our punishment for Adam and Eve disobeying God, as we were stricken with mortality first of all. And when the Elohim came and the Nephilim came and they started multiplying on the earth and splicing and manipulating DNA and all that kind of stuff, I believe something got into humanity, and it's still there. And that's the NPC theory. according to me. And I think that shook a lot of people. So that was something that I've been very nervous to talk about.
Well,
The,
it's got depth to it.
right.
And I like how you're tying that in with what I would call the seed war, the
Mm-hmm.
Genesis 3:15 seed war, uh, as well as later on in Genesis 6 and the Nephilim. I like how you've tied that into with this theory about modern man, or
Mm-hmm.
or should I say, uh, modern humanoids maybe that are among
Right.
us. Uh,
Yes.
and there's a case to be made for that. I think, because I think we've been visited and I think we've been infiltrated, but I kind of want to get to that Nephilim thing too, because I think it might be cool to get into some Indiana Jones stuff later with the tablets and Mount Hermon and some of the ancient sites. But
Mm.
let's start with, because I don't want to miss the story here. And I want to know why you went on hiatus. I'm interested in why you went ghost, my friend.
um, there's a couple reasons. So when I kind of first started podcasting accidentally. It was never my plan to be a podcaster. Um, I didn't really want to be. I am a videographer. I make movies and I film videos, both as a hobby and for other people who may want them or need them, whatever. And that's kind of my passion, that and audio. Um, so I had that and I was prepared to continue making movies. One of the things that attracted me to Tony Merkel were his films that he was putting out. And that's how I got a hold of him. And then when I went on his show with my own experience, I don't even know what episode it is, but it's the Wendigo Woods episode. He said I should get into podcasting. And so after that, it was kind of a no turning back thing. I really dove into it and it was my first run at it. So I didn't know what I was doing. I had to figure out everything by myself. And, I had a very hectic life at that time as well. It's more hectic now, but it was pretty hectic then as well. And along the way, I felt like I wasn't being honest with myself. I felt like I was getting to a point where I was telling stories about things more than I was speaking truth, I guess you could say it. Like I felt like I was not the things I were saying were like I was reading somebody else's stories and I was then just being like, isn't this a cool thing? And threw it up on YouTube, the same missing 411 story that 50 other YouTubers did last week and all that kind of stuff. And I got to the point where I just felt like I was riding the trend almost. And that was getting away from the purpose of 21 CD, which stands for 21st Century Dystopian, because the message of 21 CD is dystopia is here, the world is falling apart around us, and we're living in this fake utopian reality that doesn't actually exist, and somebody needs to wake us up. And I started feeling like I was losing track of that mission. So that was a big push for me quitting. But simultaneously to all of that was this, what I consider some kind of outsider threat. I don't know what it was, but I uploaded a video on Pizzagate, and that pretty much,
Mhm.
and honestly, if you upload this somewhere, you might want to blurt that out. But
Okay.
I uploaded this video, and that was the beginning of the end of 21 CD. And I had been warned many times not to do that, but I'm a radical. First and foremost, I stand for what is right in my mind, and I hope that it's right for everybody around me as well. But I have a purpose. I feel like I'm very confident in this idea that I have a purpose here on earth. And so I put that out and I ignored everybody's warnings. And that's when everything started falling apart. So my gear would start malfunctioning randomly in ways that it never had. The same gear that I've been using for years and I take really good care of my stuff. So the malfunctions that I were experiencing, such as power surges and lack of connection and all these kinds of things, they just didn't seem right. They didn't seem natural, and they were only occurring when I was working on 21 CD material. They weren't happening when I was filming weddings or short films or anything like that. It was when I was doing 21 CD content, I was noticing a spike in malfunctions in my gear. And that's really frustrating when you're a one-man team, because you're out here, you have to edit this, you have to film it, you have to record it, you have to make sure the audio levels are, you get it, you're a podcaster yourself, and it's a lot of work. And to me, all those malfunctions, they really got under my skin, because I started feeling like, is this worth the work anymore? Like, is this worth it? Now you amplify that by when I started going grocery shopping, I was literally being followed around grocery stores. This happened a number of times, and I don't know what that is either. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it could be paranoia, of course. It could be paranoia that 5G gives you cancer too. Who knows? It could be paranoia that anything does anything. But that's part of this whole sickness. This NPC sickness is not, people don't listen to their paranoias anymore. So when I started experiencing all those things together, combined with me feeling like I wasn't really fulfilling my purpose, I just said, you know what? I probably will be back. There were a couple personal life things in there that I needed to look at as well. But though that was the real meat and potatoes of why I left.
Sure.
And yeah, go ahead.
Did you upload that? I remember the Pizzagate episode. I sent it to a couple people. Actually, I thought it was well done. I was impressed with it. I know it's a hot topic. I know it brings the heat on you when you talk about it too. But you went in deep with that. I sent it to people. Did you upload that to YouTube though?
Oh yeah, I uploaded that everywhere.
Yeah.
I was no shame in it. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna see what happens. And that's one of my downfalls, is I usually push the envelope. I push it too fast, too quick. And I did that. And that caused my whole YouTube channel. I completely forgot about that. That caused my whole YouTube channel to become demonetized. And since they made me take a training, this is some dystopian crap for you. They made me take a training to get my account back after I did that, because they were going to delete my account unless I took this special training.
What, like some onboarding HR type stuff, like a course?
Exactly like that.
Ugh.
If you were to say something messed up at your place of work and HR came in and they said, we got a training for you because you said some stupid stuff last week, that's what it was like. And so YouTube sends me this invitation to their training. I pop in, and because what's at risk here is the podcast. Basically, they were like, we're going to shut down your YouTube channel. And so I was like, okay. So I go up in there and they start asking me, it's a series of questions. It was like 12 questions. And these questions were all relating to my video. Every single one of them, they were saying stuff like, when you say this about an allegedly true scenario revolving Pizzagate, is that really the appropriate thing to say? And it's like, what? Like,
wow. At one Did point, they really have it in the training course? Pizzagate was in the training course?
Yes, that's how I knew.
Seriously?
Yes, it was. They were even taking words that I said verbatim in the video and weird. Asking me. Yeah, they took quotes from my video and they asked me about them. And it was like I was standing trial. It didn't feel like a training. It felt like I was in trial at YouTube. And they were just like, when you say this, and it's some scalding thing that I said about that one lady that accidentally didn't become president that one time.
Right.
You know, like they asked me specifically, when you say this about HC.
Uh-oh. I just lost you.
Is this something that you could consider being offensive? How's it? Am I back?
You're back. Yeah. As soon as you said HC, man, it went.
That's what I'm talking about, dude.
I know. I hear you. Maybe we can. So I'm glad you shared that, because I didn't know it was going on to that extent. I've alluded to the censorship here and there on this
Mm-hmm.
podcast because you and I both started in 2023.
Okay.
When we started podcasting, everybody I knew that's in this space talking about remotely similar stuff, everybody was getting censored on YouTube, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people that aren't really, maybe they're not into conspiracy or UFOs or etc. I don't think they have any clue that this censorship was going on. But it was the weirdest thing. Everybody experienced it to the point where when I came out with my show, I decided I'm still not on YouTube. I'm going to be, but I decided I'm not going to deal with YouTube right now because everybody I knew was having issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people need to know that because I think there's people who listen to this show that maybe don't even understand the extent of what was going on there with some of with us, with some of our friends in podcasting it and with yourself. And it's just amazing to me though that what's creepy about this is that they tailor made this training session for you specifically and for what you talked about on that podcast. That's
It was
creepy.
it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. I mean, well, no, that's not true, but it was
Yeah.
extremely bizarre to me. I couldn't believe that because it was a violation. It felt like a violation, and it felt like a real punishment. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
actually felt like I was being sat down in front of my mom and dad, and they were like, "You did this naughty thing, so now you're grounded." You know, that's what it
Mhm.
felt like. And to this day, they won't let me monetize my account. So I don't know. Thankfully I didn't lose it, but like I don't know why I still can't monetize my account. They also took all my money, by the way,
Mhm.
that I had on CD Studios that I had not transferred to my bank account. They took that money as well. So in my opinion, they also stole money from me, which I mean everybody that's the internet for you. But
Yeah,
it's
right.
yeah, so I'm still on YouTube. YouTube is actually my preferred platform. That's where I get most of my content moving. But I'm moving away from it. There's some other apps that are out there that I'm going to move towards. Unfortunately, they don't really allow the same amount of growth. But this is one of the things that you have to be able to do as a content creator in this space, this sort of controversial opinion space.
Mhm.
You have to be able to be extremely malleable. You have to be able to move from this platform to this platform if it means your podcast continues, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I I considered all this stuff when I first started out. I mean, everybody I listened to in this space talked about the censorship and it was for all kinds of stuff too, man. And I'll tell you this, I've been on a deep dive lately and I've gotten so much stuff it might be a book one day or I might put it out as a couple episodes, I'm not sure, but it's about the Nazis and some of the stuff that happened back in the 40s and I'm running into censorship with that.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that they did that you can't find any information on online, and if you do, it's a hit piece about it. It's a piece from one of these establishment like places, and they've put out like a smokescreen article. They've put out like a fake news article about what really happened, so people aren't getting the true story, and that's just with a very obscure niche thing. But people were getting censored for talking about anything to do with 2020,
Mm-hmm.
uh the jab, anything gate that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean the list just goes on. And
Right.
just I mean when I'm looking at articles about the toroidal field and the tokamak and like the Nazi bell and were the Nazis working on anti-gravity craft, why am I coming up against censorship with that? Something that so it's all across the boards. I guess that's my point. But I remember even I think in your Denver airport episode,
Hmm.
I think even in that episode you mentioned a guy following you around in the grocery store.
Yeah,
And my question is that like a Men in Black thing? Because did you say it was a guy in a suit or what?
it was a guy in a suit. It was a weird. It was one of those things like people describe before they saw Mothman, like an Indrid
Uh,
Cold sort of
yeah,
vibe, because it was a it was a man in a suit, but he looked old, but didn't seem to be old. And he was, when I looked up, because I had noticed him following me throughout the store. So I got to the cheese and I just stopped and I just stood my ground and looked right at him. And he looked right back at me, just straight face, no expression. And his skin, it looked human, but it was like that uncanny valley thing. It was kind of just like,
sure.
are you one of them, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was enough to give me the creeps that, my wife was with me at the time, and I just looked right at her and I was like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And she was like, I'm seeing this. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know, maybe we're onto something here.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, even back in the 60s, you mentioned Mothman, John Keel was talking about coming up against guys like that, where and the other people in the town of Point Pleasant and that adjacent town across the river in Ohio, they all had similar stories about these guys who they were usually wearing suits and
Mm-hmm.
they there was something not quite right about them. There's something a little off, and usually it had something to do with the skin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah. So in those cases, a lot of the time the skin was wet. It seemed wet and it
Hmm.
seemed pieced together. And I have a whole theory on that. Obviously, Mothman is one of my, well, I think it's a very interesting topic. I think a lot of people overlook it or see it as some sort of cult thing, but I think there's a lot to it that we haven't really paid much attention to. But one of the things revolving around Mothman is those weirdly not human men in black,
Yep.
and yeah, I maintain that I believe I came in contact with one of them, and if I didn't, that's just fine too. It was just some really weird, creepy old guy staring at me in a grocery
Sure.
store, which
Sure.
is also creepy.
Yeah, but I mean, you've said it enough over the course of like the last year and some change that you've been followed by people. So, you know, maybe not every time you felt like you were being followed, you were, but I think there is something to what you're telling me. And I'm with you on the Mothman thing as well, man. I think that whole book from John Keel is a microcosm for greater ufology. If you
Mm-hmm.
if you look into this subject uh, and you go to that book, you're going to come out with a broader understanding of just all things weird. And it is
Mm-hmm.
it is it is often overlooked. And I mean, I think there's stuff in that Mothman investigation, and I like Kill, but I think there's stuff that he overlooked too.
Definitely. And if have you ever had a sighting of your own?
Yeah, yeah. What
So
kind though?
just any kind whatsoever. You're seeing something you can't explain.
Mhm.
There's you focus so much on some things, but you forget what else is happening all around, or you don't even think about it because you're so focused on, let's just say, the eyes, the red eyes, that you forget to really get a good description of the rest of the body or something like that. And I think I'm agreeing with you. I think that there is some stuff that he overlooked that I would really, really like to know about. But unfortunately, Mothman is just not a common topic outside of that story. He does have sightings all over Chicago and some other places, but a lot of those, after studying, I've probably studied over 1,000 Mothman cases, and a lot of those seem like they might not be Mothman. But
Yeah,
I
what do you
wish I
think?
could.
What do you think about speaking of NPCs, the NPC type guys that were wearing the plaid shirts that showed up and worked, air quotes, worked on the bridge?
Very
Bef
strange.
yeah, that makes me think that there's uh some organization swooped in and blew that thing, blew that bridge.
Yeah, and for some kind of reason other than just to kill, there had to be something else
Sure.
going
Like a
on.
ritual or something, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That I think that some of us us guys that are doing this today, it would be cool for us to do a deep dive into Mothman and like pick up some of the pieces that were
Mm-hmm.
kind of missed. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you can go back to a lot of these old UFO encounters and stories, and you can find things
Yeah, absolutely.
that maybe didn't make sense to the researcher at the time, but where we're at today and all the other anecdotal stuff that we can pick and pull from, you insert that into one of these old UFO encounters, and you might see things a little bit clearer than they have been seen in the past. I try to do some of that on here, but let me show you this, because this is kind of crazy. So, like an hour after I reached out to you,
Mm-hmm.
I got this weird phone call, right? I took a screenshot of it. Uh, let me know if you could see this.
Yeah,
You,
I can see it.
you see the top number there?
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice big fat 666 in there.
Just right there in the middle.
I
Yeah.
just thought that was weird, man. I was like,
You
I
know
gotta.
what else is weird? Go back to that.
All right, all right, all right.
This is something that I've been studying. This is going to be in my first episode back um,
Okay.
on July 2nd. If you look here, so you have, oh, this is really interesting to me. 743. If you add those numbers up, you're going to get 14, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
10,
then
yeah, 14.
you've got, of course, the 666. If you add up 8 and 6, you've got 14. And if you add up 8 and 5, you've got 13. So my next episode back is basically about how this whole Washington D.C. is just a big witch table for sorcery, for ancient Egyptian magic. And I'm going to tell you a story about this here in a minute. But when Osiris was cut up by Set in ancient Egypt, according to their lore, the ancient gods, he was cut up into 14 pieces by Set, and he was thrown into the Nile River. And Osiris was like the master god. He's also known as Apollo in Greece. He is a big god, and Set was jealous. So he attacked him, cut him up into 14 pieces, and threw him in the Nile. And Isis, Osiris's mate, saw that. And grieving, she gathered all the pieces of Osiris that she could find, but she could only find 13. And the 14th piece was his genitals, which is now the symbol of the obelisk. But I thought that was interesting because in Washington, D.C., a lot of the monuments and the White House and the Washington Monument, all those are set up according to ancient Egyptian blueprints for this very ritual, the ritual that a pharaoh will go to before he becomes a pharaoh, a man to pharaoh, basically a man to God. And it's all according to this 1314 ritual. So very interesting that the numbers we're getting out of there are 1314 and 666.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That whole layout of the Masonic layout of Washington, D.C., I find that very interesting. I mean, even down to, I saw a guy, let me see if I can remember this enough to explain it to you. I saw a guy who did a video and he's breaking down some of the symbolism that you can kind of overlay on the grid there of Washington, D.C. He put the eye that's on the dollar, the pyramid on the dollar bill. He overlaid that over Washington D.C. and on the dollar bill, that pyramid has a little gap between the top of it. Like there's a smaller pyramid up top. He used that as well. So he overlaid that it's the Pyramid of Jed, I believe. But anyway, he overlays that over the city, and right in the middle of the top pyramid where the eye is the Masonic Lodge.
Of course.
Of course, right? That where what's his name is buried? Pike. Pike's
Oh,
buried at that.
Outpike, yeah.
Yeah. But it's the Scottish Rite Masonic temple. It's the biggest temple there, a Masonic temple there in DC. It's where Pike's buried. It's like
It's
a
probably the hair
hub for
dome,
them.
right?
It might have a dome, yeah.
Yeah, I think they call it the hair dome because it's like a square building, but kind of domed. So the funny thing about that is they do a ritual there every time there's a new president. While the president is being basically crowned, if you want to call it that, while he's going through the process, the Masons do a ritual in that building. And it is also to Osiris, it's to Apollo. And the idea is that one day there's going to be a president that comes through, and this ritual, the magic sticks. And up until this point, it hasn't. The sorcery hasn't worked. The evil hasn't gotten through. It's not the appointed time, whatever, however you want to describe it. The curse hasn't worked. But when it does work on one of these presidents, there's a large amount of people who believe that that's going to be the Antichrist. And the last person that it stuck to was George Washington, but that's a whole topic of its
Yeah.
own.
Well, that's cool. So another thing I'm going to show you here. So when we talked, when I first reached out after I got that weird call from this number that has 666 and 13 and 14 in it, I had to get on Amazon to get something for my niece. And you had mentioned to me that you were looking into this subject, broadly speaking, the end of the world. And the first thing I see on Amazon is this. It's a survival kit that, and here, let me, and here's the best part. It's got 222 pieces of survival gear. So you
What is
get your
going on, man?
222. What do you think about that number, that 222?
Well, it's one of those heavenly numbers. Heavenly just meaning of, spiritual, but yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That kind of stuff, I see that stuff happening all the time, man. And what do you think that is? What do you think sends you that? Do you think it's just as simple as AI, voice control, they can hear you and
Well, no, I don't think it's
send you
always
this
that
all for marketing,
simple.
or do you think there's something more going on there?
I think there's more going on sometimes. I mean, I think that there's a trickster element to the phenomenon that likes to engage with us. And because I've experienced that. I mean, when I first started talking about doing this podcast, I started having weird little UFO things happen to me, like sightings and stuff. And I had a sighting on the phone with my friend while he had a sighting, and he's in another state.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know that was in what he saw 7 lights that just popped up in the sky and just disappeared. And he told me about it, and I was like, why not? I'll go outside, and see if anything happens. And of course, as soon as I walk outside, I saw a bright light um, that didn't come from out of the atmosphere. It looked like it arced over from a
Mm-hmm.
mountain, and it blinked 3 times at me. And it was just too coincidental. I was like, man, you're not going to believe this. So in a situation like that, and that happened to me, that's hand on the Bible, that happened to me. In a
Mm-hmm.
situation like that, I think there's some synchromysticism going on. And I think that there's a trickster behind it. And I think ultimately what happened was I I got played because my first 10 episodes were about UFOs because of that.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's exactly the spot I got too, where I was just like, I just got wrapped up in something. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is part of the plan, their plan to screw with this space specifically. I think they like it when you obsess over Bigfoot and Dogman and all these things. They like it when you get stuck on one topic because it doesn't allow you to connect the dots to the Nephilim or the Elohim, or the fact that there are fallen angels walking this planet right now. And like maybe this diversion creature out in the woods, I'm not saying he's not a Nephilim or a fallen angel or whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't really care what you call it, but it is sort of interesting how people get stuck on that topic and they never bridge the gap to spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me make sure I still got you
Like,
with me.
why?
O-
And now
Okay.
can
I think you're back. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, we back?
Yeah, we're back. We're
Okay.
back. I missed about 3 to 4 sentences there.
I just think that Bigfoot and Mothman and Dogman, all these things, I think they are real. I think they're very real. But I think that there is some kind of entertainment god, some kind of god in the entertainment, some kind of god in the tech. And I do think that they like it when we get all caught up on these one topics, these monsters in the woods. But we forget to attach them spiritually to what they could actually be, such as Nephilim or some sort of experiment gone wrong by the Elohim, something that shouldn't exist at all. And then on a scientific side, you could also argue that no, this is just a species we've never discovered. And I don't believe that, but a lot of people do. But the point is, you get stuck and you just start debating, reading stories, finding evidence for this, that, and the other thing. And it's just kind of like you forget the point. The point is this is a spiritual being in some way, and
Yeah.
it's captivating so many people. There has to be a reason. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons that I stopped, dude, because I was just getting caught up in that, and I felt like I was trapped too.
Yeah.
Just like you with your 10 episodes on UFOs.
Yeah. And I didn't realize it until I was probably in episode 9. I was like, I think I know what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was never meant to be just a UFO show.
Right.
And what's funny about that is now I'm getting some pushback because it was never meant to be a UFO show. So now, for instance, I did this Genesis 3:15 episode, and it's the most controversial thing I've put out. Some people lost their minds I think just because I talked about the Bible. And
Did you not come out swinging as a Christian podcast, or?
no, I didn't. I No, I didn't. I mean, not for any
Yeah.
reason though. I mean, I am a Christian, but I knew that I wasn't going to run this thing like a Bible study either, so I didn't
Right.
necessarily go that. And I
Yeah.
think that's what people got stuck on, was me going into scripture and using scripture to try to lay out and explain this event. And it's just something that people are going to have to get used to. It's like, I'm not going to do UFOs 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these old texts, the Bible included, have answers, have clues at the very least for unlocking stuff that we need to know in modern times. So I'm going to go there. People just have to get comfy with it. And I'm not gonna be, you know, you'll get your UFO stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's just what it is. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I got played into doing 10 episodes. And look, I didn't shy away from Christianity either. Like, I talked about it, and I talked about the Israelites plenty. I know I've you know beat that dead horse, but you know, speaking of these watchers, because that's what that episode was on, that I got all this heat for, and these Nephilim, I'd like to maybe look at your last episode where you left off as a podcaster, and some of the stuff you covered there. You covered Mount Hermon. You covered a tablet and a spiral temple. You went into this Sir Charles Warren. He's an interesting character. He worked with the Jack the Ripper case, and I
Mm-hmm.
think he had an interest in the ancient past because he also excavated Jerusalem and Temple Mount and Mount Hermon. And I don't know, maybe I should just give people just a refresher on this. Mount Hermon is where these ET, these beings came down. I say that because fallen angels is not a term in the Bible. I think
Mm-hmm.
these are extraterrestrial type beings, these watchers. They come down, and you and I know the rest of the story. They mate with the women of earth. They teach their fathers forbidden knowledge. They have these hybrid kids called Nephilim, which is why your last episode was called Dark Nephilim and the Tablet of Mount Hermon.
Yeah, the
And
Dark Watchers. Yeah.
okay, yeah, Dark Watchers. Okay, excuse me. And where these beings come down, they find an ancient temple. This guy, what's his name? I just said it.
Charles Warren. Yeah.
Charles Warren, right there on the summit of Mount Hermon, and it's known today as Khazar Ansar.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should just give a summary here and just stop me if I miss something.
Yeah, go
But
for it.
okay, it's the highest temple of the ancient world. And by the way, guys, this is all stuff John brought out in his last episode. I highly encourage you to go listen to it. He pulled out a lot of great details. And one of the things that he brought to my attention is that this was the highest temple of the ancient world. It was sitting at some 9,000 feet above sea level. And by the way, it's got these huge blocks up there still that I don't know how they got up there. So there's that element too. But you've got, here's what I wanted to bring to your attention. You've got these other Roman temples in the area
Mm-hmm.
because Mount Hermon is, I think it's 28 miles long and 10 miles wide. It's a very large area, and there's at least 6 other temples in that area, but one in particular caught my eye, and this is what I want to show you. Let me pull it up here. It's the temple of Iha, and it's got this statue here. If I can get my stuff to work. It's got this statue here at the temple. And let me, do you see that text to the left of this guy's head?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that almost looks Greek.
It's the exact same lettering that's on that tablet.
Yeah, it looks very similar to that. Yeah.
Okay, because, and I'll explain to people what the tablet is. Of course, you covered that in your episode, but remember they were saying that it was some sort of a weird type of Greek.
Yeah, it was the Greek that the words weren't fitting together, the letters weren't the same, but it was like Greek symbols. It was like, yeah.
Yeah. So that Y you see in this inscription here that there's a couple figures that look like Ys. That's not, first of all, that's not a Roman character at all.
Hmm.
So, and that's what they're labeling this as. They're saying that this is the Romans did this. And then you've got these V's that look, they're upside down V's. They look like a teepee that's been swept out at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
That's an Arabic character.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And I'll just show everybody the tablet real quick.
It's the Temple of Niha.
Niha, Niha. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
I want to show you how close that lettering is to this temple. Okay, there we go. So you see you've got the Y in here, that strange Y that's not Greek or Roman. It might be Greek. I don't think it's Greek, but it's definitely not Roman. It's got these K's that you see in the Niha statue. I think it's the same language, man, is my point.
Yeah, I think so too. Or yeah, a lot of these characters look exactly the same.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at here is a lot of the temples there in the Mount Hermon area, I think we're not being told the truth about, because they're saying it, the Romans did it. And I know that Alexander the Great came in there in like 300 BC and conquered the area, but I don't think they built all these temples. I think it goes back to an earlier age. And like this tablet does, I think it points back to this Mount Hermon Watcher event. And right up the road from Neha, where that statue is Baalbek. And at Baalbek, you've got all these temples and columns that the Phoenicians built, but a lot of times they'll pass that off as Roman as well. So I think you got to ask, like, did the ancient Italians really build all this stuff in the Holy Land? Because that's what they're telling us. But I've got the tablet up here, and
No,
they
I
say,
think what happened was this was a very well-known place, and people from all cultures came here to worship, and they came here from all across the wherever. They did pilgrimages here. They built temples here. People from all walks of life, because this was clearly some kind of holy place to them. Now we know they weren't worshiping uh, Yahweh. They weren't worshiping God as we know Him. They were worshiping their own gods, and I believe that that only enforces the idea that um, something very powerful happened here.
yeah, and it's even on this tablet, like here in the picture, they have a translation of it, and it says, hence by the order of the God, those who do not take the oath, probably. Okay, and then it goes into a description mode, but it
Yeah.
says, hence by the order of the God, those who do not take the oath, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll just add a more clearer picture to that. There's a guy from Harvard named George Nicholsburg who also transcribed this text. He said that it said, according to the command of the holy God, those who take an oath proceed from here.
Right.
I have some, I kind of disagree with him in some sense, but I think for the most part, that's what this tablet says. And I think it refers to this oath that's was taken by the angels under
Mm-hmm.
Semyaza. They all 200 watchers come down. They decide to do what they're going to do, and they decide to band together and do it together so that one guy isn't the fall guy. Like, so
Right.
basically, Semyaza doesn't get punished for everybody's deeds. They all say, let's take the oath, let's do this together. They 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 bound themselves together with a curse as well. And this is all in the book of Enoch. And of course, they come down, they take wives. And so this area, this Mount Hermon, is said to be known even by the locals as the mountain of the oath. And as far back as people in the area can remember, and as far back as we can tell, this was known as the mountain of the oath. So the
Mm-hmm.
whole region points back to this Mount Hermon event and this oath. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I think this tablet is so quintessential.
I
And
100% agree. Yeah.
yeah. And here's the thing. There's a word on this tablet that's not Greek. It's called Batiyu or Badiyu.
Okay.
It's a Sumerian word associated with Enlil.
Mm.
It means, I think that's what this holy God part is about. I don't think it's talking about the God of Israel. I think it's talking about this other entity, this Enlil deity. Because, and what's interesting about that is Enlil's name loosely means Lord of the Wind, which sounds a lot like Prince and Power of the Air in my opinion.
Where does Enlil, what culture is that from? I haven't heard that.
That's I'm pretty sure that's in the old Babylonian creation myth,
Okay.
or it's
Yeah, I mean,
Sumerian. It's Enki and Enlil. They're one of the Babylonian or Sumerian creation myths. I think he's Anunnaki. if we were to, you know,
Yeah.
go
No,
that, yeah.
I
That points Enlil's true identity to being Lucifer. And it all comes back to this tablet.
right. And all these gods are the same. It's not like there's an infinite number of gods depending on who decided to crawl out from under a rock and make one. But it's so these gods, whatever names they go by, they're probably the same, roughly 200 that we know about.
Mhm.
And I think this was mainly a place. I don't think when you say the most holy God, because I've seen other people say that too, and they're like, oh well, clearly this is a Christian thing or a Jewish thing or something like that. No, I think this is really the start of a revolution. I think that's what it is. I think this was those who wish to smite God came down here on this mountain and they said, are we really going to do this? And everybody was scared because, yep, that is scary. You're about to go to war with God, so you're going to lose. But they're shadowed, so they don't know that. And they decided that, yeah, we're going to do this thing. And that's really where it all started. And I believe that this is also when all of the people say like Dogman and Bigfoot, they can't hurt people and like stuff like that. Like somehow they're unable to hurt humanity. I disagree with that. And I think this is one of the starting points for when angels actually started attacking mankind, killing mankind for
Yeah.
their.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I think it goes back to the garden. And I'll just
Mhm.
say one more thing about this tablet so we can move on. That word badiu or badiu, when you look into Enlil, Bat is the secret name for Enlil that means enmity.
Hmm.
So we're right back at Genesis 3:15, where God said, I will put enmity between your seed and her seed.
That's a very interesting correlation there.
Yeah. Enlil, Semyaza, these other watchers, it looks to me like you said, they started to war with us. It
Mhm.
looks to me like they wanted to create their own race, like Nazi style. They wanted to use human women to create like a super race. And so they may have built structures to signify that cause, not to mention they were teaching humans all this craft, witchcraft, knowledge, armory, weaponry. They probably erected buildings for all that teaching. And I think, just to go back to something you said as well about this mountain, I think these watchers knew about the spirit energy and the powers of the earth. And I think they put temples here to kind of tap into that on this mountain. They picked the mountain for a reason. It was where the transfiguration took place.
Mhm.
It's a place where I think the spirit world is less veiled. It's a place probably conducive to portals. There's more, in my opinion, to these temples on Mount Hermon. I think that this tablet might be the key to unlocking that. And this all points back to your episode, man. Like, hats off, because I try to pick up where your research left off. Because I mean, it was just, first of all, it was a heck of an episode for you to go out with. You know, if you're going to ever go on a hiatus as a podcaster, like, do an episode like this. You know what I'm saying? And
Just don't go on hiatus. Just stick with
yeah.
it.
But and the Canaanites saw Mount Hermon as a place where the heavens, the earth, and the underworld met. So there's all this lore. I think when the Romans came along, uh, I don't think they might be Roman temples originally, but I think the Romans kind of came along and saw this region. Like you're saying, they used it as like a spiritual place. They saw this mountain probably as Axis Mundi, which is a Latin word for cosmic connection between, heaven and earth. This is a spiritual place.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a story as old as time. Like you can
Yeah.
look at any of the Christian Crusades, as well, because this is what people do. They capture holy lands. That's what like when you really come down to it. That's what humans do, and this is one of those lands. And I think through time, lands become less and less important to the humans of the modern age, whatever the modern age is at that time. And you know, like Hitler probably wasn't really interested in this, even though maybe he should have been. You know what I mean? It kind of depends on who
Yeah.
finds it holy. But in the ancient world, I think it was probably one of the most holy places around. And it was revered as such. I think that um, it is still to this day. There's a reason not just anybody can go up there. Anytime that somebody, you are restricted from going there, you have to ask yourself, why? Is there a military base? Am I somehow endangering other people if I'm there? Is it a, you know, a sensitive ecosystem? Or is there something being hidden? Just like if you go and you try to look at the Anasazi 6 foot, six-toed footprints painted on the walls down in where's that, Arizona and New Mexico. The
Mhm.
Anasazi were another race that I believe was smited by Nephilim and Elohim in conjunction. But you can't see that evidence on the wall because it is a secret location that not the public can't go to. So anytime you have those kinds of areas, absolutely, I'm going to assume that that is a powerful place of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. And linking this up to the Nephilim and to all this warring and smiting, uh, I think so. The Phoenicians were definitely in this area where this tablet was found. Their mark on history is all over Baalbek. Phoenicians were also, in my opinion, seafaring. I think they were seafaring way earlier than history gives them credit for. I think
Mm-hmm.
they had an ancient route to North America. I think they were coming over here, and I think they were bringing you know who with them, Nephilim.
North America was overwhelmed with Nephilim in the early days.
Yeah,
Overwhelmed.
and they may have been coming over from both sides. They may have been crossing that land bridge as well. I know that
Yeah.
that's another theory, but yeah, I mean, this stuff, once you open your eyes to this and to some of the stuff that John's talking about,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see history spring to life.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Exactly. And this goes back to why you can't get focused on just cryptids or just
right.
UFOs, because it ties into the bigger story that is, you need to be able to see the whole thing to ever find any answers at all. You can't just look at one small detail. That's like you want, you know, a sandwich, but you think you're good enough with just the bottom piece of bread. You're never going to get the sandwich if you're just, that's where you're satisfied. You have to get the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I firmly that that's all, that it all leads back to that one place.
Yeah. So that's what I'm starting to see. And even if I was planning on just sticking to a plan of doing just solely UFOs, even if that was my plan,
Mm-hmm.
like it wouldn't have lasted long because my research has led me to a couple things, and it all goes back to the Watchers coming down here on this mountain. It goes back to giants. It goes back to serpent iconography. And then some people might put fairy lore or whatever else in as a category into that as well. But in my research, it's those three things. It's these Anunnaki watchers, ETs, whatever you want to call them, coming down to Mount Hermon, the giants, and this seed war serpent iconography that you see all over the place. And by the way, that's being hidden as well. I just found a thing the other day. My buddy Travis Roy from Giants of Ancient America showed me an old article that alluded to 8 other serpent mounds that were found in North America. Like, it's not just Serpent Mound in Ohio. That's the only one they're letting us know about. So sorry, I know that was a tangent there, but I mean, I think one of the questions that you posed in your last episode was, what happened to this tablet, right?
What happened to the tablet? Because the tablet is missing. But another big thing was uh, the spiral the spiral shape of the temples. When you get an aerial view of them, there is a spiral shape. And the spiral shape can be found all throughout history, especially in these serpent worshiping cultures. And I'm just now connecting the dots that the spiral, maybe it's not, I believe the spiral is a symbol of portal of other world. That's what I think it's of. And now that's becoming almost a mainstream idea. A lot of people are starting to think that spiral could be a
Yeah.
serpent as well. The serpent is the only animal that's going to be able to get in that shape. You know, that could be a synchronicity right there. It could be a commonality that is worth looking at. But yeah, when you talk about North America having more than we're being led to believe, absolutely. I believe that North America, the United States area specifically, and of course Canada, but like I think mainly the United States because of the the temperatures and stuff like that. A lot of Canada is completely barren, but it was filled with creatures that we can't explain.
Yeah.
And some of them are still here and some of them are gone. Like when they lock up various portions, massive amounts of land that you just can't go to or have no way of getting to. But if you fly over it, a Blackhawk appears out of nowhere or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There might be something that's actually out there that the powers that be have been told by these Elohim, you can't kill that thing. Leave that thing there. Don't touch that. There might be a pyramid. There could be anything out there.
Yeah. Yeah. North America is really the final
And
frontier of archaeology right
and
now.
when
But go ahead. I think we I
we
think we
also came
experienced a little glitch there.
sorry, I
Sorry, go
get the
ahead.
notification. Yeah. I without a doubt what we have is a group of Masons came over to the United States and you had a group of Masons come over and basically have their way with this country. And they wrote the laws, they wrote everything that we need to have a prospering society. But we can't forget who those people were. And they were not Christians. They weren't. Some of them, but the vast majority were not Christians. Washington himself was not a Christian. He proclaims that from the mountaintops. So to say that this is one nation under God, it kind of goes back to the tablet. Which God? Which most holy God is this?
No, I'm losing you a little bit. I lost you at which God is.
One nation
We're
under
we're getting too close to the
this.
truth, man. You cut out through all that. Let me see. Let me see if
I
you're.
don't know
I
what's
think.
going on, man.
Yeah, I think you're back now. Yeah. Of course, you're on this epic spiel about the Masons, and I lost most of that. So, but I mean, I'm with you. You know, I'm very much with you with that. Uh, I when it comes to the Masons. Well, first of all, are we still connected?
Yeah, I got a flood here last night. I'm wondering if I live right on a river, so I'm wondering if that has something to do with this. I don't know,
Okay.
but
Well,
I am
so
back. I do see you.
okay, great. Um, I just it does go back to the Masons, and I think I'm because I've come across some very interesting things lately. Because I told you I've been on this deep dive about the Nazis, and like, and we even talked about Albert Pike. You know, he has that whole that letter that was discovered where he broke down like the three world wars and how that they would be used for world domination and new world order. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Albert Pike letter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you read that if you're just kind of reading that without any backstory, it's like this is ridiculous. Like nobody has the means to control like this. But when you look into like this idea of social masonry, and it looks like communism and socialism came out of were tools put put in place by the Masons to rule nations. It's called social masonry. It's a concept that I think very well could have been used by a small group of elites at the top to kind of sway everything towards one day being this one world government, which is ultimately what we're talking about here. But it goes back to the Masons, man. It goes back to this social masonry idea. It's wild.
It is wild. And, the United States has fulfilled a number of prophecies, and I believe that there are a number more that are yet to be fulfilled by this country. There's a whole group of people that believe that this is the real Israel, that the lost tribes of Israel are in the United States somehow. And, I can very easily see how some people could see that as bigotry to say that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying I believe in that. I'm still researching that kind of stuff, but there's a lot that goes into the United States that I think most people don't really realize. And it's becoming my idea, my opinion, I should say, that this is not a Christian nation. This is not, and nor has it ever been, a one nation under the true God. I believe that, the Bible talks about how when these angels came to earth, God separated the countries among them, and they hold principality in these countries. The United States is arguably the most powerful country in the world. Of course, we have an angelic principality. Of course, there is somebody pulling the strings up here. And I believe that all is part of one big master plan that started when a bunch of Masons came over here and built the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. And tied it into maybe the Watchers and, the Book of Enoch and the time of Jared and the mystery schools and the secret societies that we're talking about. If you go back far enough, they trace their lineage back to Enoch, son of Cain, before the flood.
Right.
And it's the knowledge and the Enochian mysticism that allows for there to be a secret society in the first place. It's their job it's the secret society's job to guard the Enochian mysticism and make sure it doesn't fall into the hands of the public, because it's powerful, powerful knowledge. I think Masonry is a nod to Enoch's technology and Metatron's cube and all of that stuff when you get real deep into the Book of Enoch. But ancient Masonry is, being from Enoch, I think sort of maybe disperses off, maybe it branches off after the creation of the Knights Templar. I think the idea was to branch out to avoid destruction, to avoid like the Templar dying off and thus all those secrets dying with them. So I think they split into like Freemasonry proper, Rosicrucians, Bavarian Illuminati, maybe Royal Society, Rothschild banking family. And because if you look at the Rothschild banking family, you look at the Canticles, the Rothschild Canticles, it's a book that's stored at Yale. I think it points back to this story of this happening. I think you could throw Jesuits in there as well. Like that's your Anthony Fauci. He's a card carrying Jesuit. Look at where he went to college. And I don't know. I think that somewhere along the way, what was one or two major secret societies branched out. And that's why it's kind of hard to, put your finger on just one group sometimes.
Oh, no, I don't put it on one group. When people talk about, all these different sects of Masonry and stuff, it's all one, man. Like they can call it whatever they want, but they're all playing the same sport. And I just think it does go way back. I think it goes back to the ancient Sumerians, the Egyptians. Like, yeah, that's where it came from. And the reason why I so firmly believe that and will probably never be shaken from it is because you can see it happen throughout history. You can watch where the magic came from, and you can just trace it down. The Templars were killed by their own friends. They were killed off for a reason. They had already established a global banking system. They were no longer needed, but they were also devout to a very specific leader, and that had to go. So, in my opinion, I think the Templars were too strong. And so another group of Masons killed them off to get rid of that, and then overtook everything they had. But you'll notice that the treasure never was found. The Templar treasure that was supposed to be the greatest of all time that anybody had ever seen. They were supposed to have religious relics. They were supposed to have things that nobody had ever heard of, technology nobody had ever could even imagine, and it's all gone.
Yeah.
So, something like that. But
You could tie Hitler into it as well. That's all I was going to say, because I think he may have been looking for that treasure.
absolutely. I mean, Hitler was looking for. It's kind of funny because Hitler was not a Christian by any means. He believed, I think he believed in God, and it seemed like he hunted down these relics out of spite because he wanted to use them for, devious reasons. But
Yeah.
um,
He may have just been a pawn that got out of control. I'm not sure, but this goes back to that social masonry that I was talking about, because I think maybe I could say this better. I think that communism and socialism possibly were devised by a sect of Freemasons to sort of plunge groups of people into certain states and certain nation states that would allow for a new world order. And I think
mhm.
that's what Albert Pike was writing about with his predictions of the world wars. And he's, again, a card carrying Mason. He's buried at the hub, at the temple there in DC. In the mantle of the beast is where he lays. And I don't know if those letters were just revelation of method or what, but I've always been skeptical of how deep the Mason tie in with all this is, but recently I've really been seeing it. And I do want to say this, like, I've had Masons on the show. I have friends that are Masons. I don't think that modern Masonry is necessarily a part of this. I think something has happened where that's become more of like a social club.
Well, it's like Area 51. Like when your secret is discovered, you're an idiot if you don't move your secret. So like it still exists. It's very much still here, but it's not what these weekend Masons attend for fun or hot dogs or whatever they do now. Like it's none of that. I think there are still Masons in these groups that know where it actually is, where the sorcery actually goes, who's doing it. But I think 99% of Masons nowadays have no clue what they're doing. And I think that's all part of this greater witchcraft on the behalf of the devil, or whatever you want to call them. I think that it is all serving evil. It is numbers. It's an army. It's a standing army. That's what it is.
Yeah, it
And
does.
and I wanted to point this out too. When the angels came to Mount Hermon, that was the beginning of sort of their running rampant upon the face of the earth, in my opinion. Each of those angels gave mankind a different gift, and some of those gifts were how to build, how to draw up designs, how to do art, how to look at the stars and read them, how to fight, what a weapon is, all that kind of stuff that came from these fallen angels. And I think some of that was the forbidden knowledge of these Babylonian cults. And that is why they are so powerful and so able to literally destroy themselves from within and rebirth somewhere else, is because they are demonically influenced. That power transcends human powers. That is something that we can't explain.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said there about how the elites kind of use magic and sorcery. And I think you might be onto something like, yeah, 99% of the Masons are out of the loop today, but there might be like this reformed small elite group of them somewhere at the
Mm-hmm.
top behind the curtain, right? And they do play a big trick on us. And because I was able to find it while you were talking. I've got this uh, Manly P. Hall, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. He's got a chapter in here called Ceremonial Magic and Sorcery. And I'll just read a line here. It says, thus, black magic dictated the state religion and paralyzed the intellectual and spiritual activities of the individual by demanding his complete and unhesitating acquiescence, et cetera, et cetera. It's talking about priestcraft and how you take this priestcraft from the pharaohs and from ancient Egypt, and you turn it around and use it as like a big PR campaign to run your nation state.
Absolutely. That's how you create the NPCs, man. That's how you get people to do witchcraft without even knowing they're doing witchcraft. Because if everybody knew that what they were doing was leading towards this antichrist or whatever, I don't think most people would do it. You know, even if you don't believe in God, I think most people would be like, well, no, I don't want the world to end. I want life to be good. Right? That's kind of the
Right.
human condition. We're always looking out for how we're going to have the best life. And so, like, if they knew the stuff they were doing, I don't think they would do it. That's why I believe that all of this has been ingrained in us. I think some of our most basic societal habits are witchcraft. You know, I think that we perform witchcraft without knowing it. And I can't go into depths on your podcast because I will get you banned for saying some of the stuff I believe. And I'm not going to say it on mine either. It's a private conversation kind of thing. But like, there's certain organizations in the United States that profit or they assist in murder on mass scales. You don't have to look far to know what I'm talking about. And I think that's all part of this ingrained black magic, witchcraft that we don't know we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, we're also part of this war machine. We commit genocides and we just act like we didn't. And let's talk about the Smithsonian and how that was made by Mr. Smithson. I forget his first name. I think it's John too or something like that. But like, he was a Freemason that came over from England, an English sect of Freemasonry, came over here and established the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian is accused of erasing and basically rewriting the entire history of the nation, you know, and they even venture into the world sometimes. But like, they're the ones who hid all the Nephilim bones and destroyed all the evidence and paid farmers to dig up mounds and all that kind of stuff in the early days. That's all to prepare us for this new way of life where the narrative has been written. All you have to do is just keep walking towards your dreams. Just do it in our society. Everything is the way it should be. You can get your white picket fence. You can do that. Your hopes and dreams can come true. This is the land of promise. Sure, it
have to
is.
work hard. You got to work your 9 to 5 and shut up.
Yep. Work your 9 to 5 and shut up. And most of us nowadays, 9 to 5 barely exists. We're working all the time. So we can't afford anything. So we got to work all the time. And that just numbs us more and more. And over the centuries, we become these complacent NPCs that don't even realize we're not in charge of our own country anymore. We never were, really, but now especially.
It goes back, it reminds me of something George Orwell said in 1984, where he said, if I can get this right, the horizon of their minds were filled with beer, sports, and gambling. So they were not hard at all to control.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say I would replace gambling with work, with 9 to 5. Everybody's minds is on the sports games, the job they're working, and having that beer when you get off work, and rinse and repeat, do it all over again. And thus you're easy to control because all your time, all your intellectual energy is spent doing some mundane task for what you're told is the greater good.
Right.
And I'll meet you in the middle with the Masons here, because historically I'm not one to like blame everything on them. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm not,
Right.
but I'll meet you in the middle here. I think when this nation was founded, that group was definitely Masonic.
Mm-hmm.
I think the group that is behind the all-seeing eye in the pyramid on a dollar bill, I think they were Masonic. In my opinion, they're on that dollar bill because they infiltrated every powerful organization, and it's why the eye is detached, because they are detached from the rest of society, yet they're
Yeah.
above society, in charge. But when you look at the dollar bill and you look at that pyramid, it's got the little pyramid detached at the top. I know I've already talked about that, but that's symbolic for how this group used to operate, for sure, used to, when they founded this country. So that's what this is all based on.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't think like the first group of people to step onto the nation, under the country, into the country were Masons. A lot of them weren't. They were Quakers and they were all sorts of other people just trying to make a living in this new place, you know. But yes, definitely when, you know, the founding fathers is who we're talking about, really.
Yeah.
That's when stuff started to get real weird. But you know, there's another thing too, and I shouldn't be telling you too much about this because I'm going to do this on my podcast, and now there's almost no point in me even talking about on my podcast. But there were 13 colonies to make a more um, a more seasoned and sturdy union, which is the 14th. 13 colonies.
There's that number again.
There it is again. And like, you know, that's why when you showed me that number, I just immediately started adding them up because I was like, I've been thinking about 13 and 14 an awful lot. And there they were. So it's just all very interesting. And
I'm excited to see where you're ultimately going with your research. I can tell that you've been, I can tell you've had your nose in the book, so to speak.
yeah, I can't see it any other way now. It feels like everything I do points to this idea. I mean, look at our food supply, look at our water, like everything is poisoned. The fluoride in the water and the processed food and the bioengineered this and that, the food coloring that literally gives you cancer, like as you're eating it, it happens that fast. Like that kind of stuff is just, don't even get me started. Listen, the government, I don't talk about the government because of the government's sake. I would talk about like anything gate related, whether they were governmental or private party, you know, like government has nothing to do about it. Government's always going to be corrupt at some point because you have people who want to rule other people. That can only end badly. So I don't really count. I don't look at who's the president. I don't look at who's running in the race or any of that kind of stuff because I think that's all irrelevant. I think that's all a facade. That's all just something for us to look at. But the real power is behind all that. So I don't get up on my high horse and say, oh, these people are influenced by the Nephilim or the Elohim, so they should be ripped from power. No, dude, it's much more complex than that.
Yeah, you can't just strap on the end the world sign and go stand on the street corner and expect to sway anybody's opinion.
Right.
There's
and you can't get
layers to
political
this.
with it because it's not political. It's spiritual. It's not political. So
Exactly.
Politics is a human construct that we made to somehow try to maintain order in this land that has been rendered orderless because of Adam and Eve's sins. So
Speaking of NPCs, that the NPCs can have politics in this country from here on out, as far as I'm concerned. I've checked out, and you know, I'm seeing something today for the first time. I'm seeing how this NPC thing really does fit into all this.
yeah,
I didn't know we were going to talk about that at all today. And like this crazy like discussion we've had about all these powerful empires and all these ties and this, how this realm is just a reflection of the spiritual realm that we're literally like based on or dimensionally parallel to, or however you want to say it. It's like, what about the regular people of the realm? Where do they
sure.
fit into all this?
Yeah.
And
I know this is what got me in trouble because people started being like, well, my mom, is she an NPC? Okay, well, my best friend, is he an NPC? And that's literally what it got to, because people were like, where do you draw the line? When is somebody not an NPC? And so I have a whole, I don't know if you've watched all my show, but I have multiple episodes where I dig into what is an NPC, how many different types are there, is one performing this way and one is this way, all this kind of stuff. And everybody can go watch that if they want to, but I'll break it down quickly. There are stages of human. There are stages to the human. At our core, we are all one thing. We're all the same thing. We are the children of God. And so we all have souls. We all have this, that, and the other thing. But there is an imposter race that does not have souls. And they are my belief. Don't take anything I say as something that I got from the Bible or something like that. This is literally just what I believe and what I've been trying to do research on, but it's extremely hard. So mainly prayer and stuff like that. But
Sure.
it does seem like there is an imposter race of beings who do not function the way we do. And I don't know if that is because they are so dumbed down by the way that this country is, meaning we are constantly supplied with whatever we need, whenever we need it. We are packed to the brim with entertainment options. Like you said, sports. I don't really watch sports, but boy, I do like watching movies and shows and stuff. And that keeps me consuming and consumes my time. And, the actual drugs that they do and the poisons that they do put into the foods, and they make us get shots and they make us take drugs and all of that kind of stuff too. There are people who are just dumbed down to the point of, I'm just going to do my job. I'm going to then go hang out with my friends, drink my beers, and then I'm going to go home, sleep. Tomorrow, I'm going to do the same thing over and over. And that's enough for so many people. In my opinion, there are some of those people who are not humans. They are a descendant of Nephilim and humanity that through the generations has gotten closer and closer to the image of man, and they are now among us. Mm-hmm. And I believe there are those types that are just dumbed down people with souls like you and I, you and me. I think that there's layers to it, but I do believe that there is an imposter race that is still among us that came back after the flood, and they have just continued to just populate the earth just like we have. And I think we'll be surprised in the end of days when we see stuff like that become obvious. But
do you think it ties in with this? I can't even remember, RH negative. You know what I'm talking about?
Not really. I'm sorry. What
okay. Well, I shouldn't have brought it up because I don't know much about it either, but there's this RH negative blood type that allegedly a lot of the people in royalty, a lot of the, elites,
right,
have this, I think Obama has it too, and maybe some other people. And I know you're talking about the people not in charge right now. I know we're talking about the everyday man, the blue collar, whatever you want to call it, but like there is this blood type that strangely shows up in a certain group of people, and they all have power and money. So I'm thinking that, you're onto something.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too. I mean, God's not gonna. I know this. I don't want to Bible thump too hard here, but like we don't know all the scientifics and all the stuff that's going on because of the result of angels running amok on this planet. We don't know really, how many different bloodlines there are and all this kind of stuff. I saw something yesterday. It was like 15 million people, or maybe even more than that, were descendant from the original people who came off of the Mayflower, and that's crazy. So like that's a whole bloodline of itself. But my point is, like, absolutely, there are probably royal bloodlines running all over the place, and I bet that a lot of them are in power, because if the ones before them had power, odds are they're going to have power too. And I believe NPCs can be working like in the government too. Like I believe a president can be an NPC, you know, like
Yeah.
I believe that. And um,
Hmm.
I don't, just for your listeners' sake, I don't want any of these viewers or these listeners to think that I'm saying that there's a possibility they don't have a soul, because that is not it at all. The fact of the matter, it is my opinion that if you are consuming this kind of content, you're probably not an NPC. An NPC thinks you're crazy for consuming this kind of content, for
Right.
even talking about this kind of content. They will immediately shut you down. They will have no idea what to say because they don't think about this kind of stuff. They don't think about alternatives to their timeline or to their narrative because that's not the way they were programmed to do. And some of those people are just maybe not actual humans. Most of them probably are, but I do believe that there's just this tiny group that lives among us, doesn't have souls because they're Nephilim. They're Nephilim descendant. It's just like, you know, people talk about how Tolkien, his stories, Lord of the Rings and whatnot, they may be more historically accurate than most people led on, and that
Mm-hmm.
he actually may have conversed with spiritual beings because some of the stuff that he says is almost prophetic.
Yeah.
And some of the topics he covers relate to things that we can see that only somebody who consumed this type of content would be privy to. One of those things is the creation of orcs.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings or
Oh, I am.
Tolkien.
I am.
Okay. So when the orcs were originally created, they were created by kidnapping elves. And then these monsters would basically breed with the elvish women to create orcs. And after a series of evolutions of this, then now there were orcs who could do it themselves. I believe that there is a race similar to that on the planet. And those are Nephilim descendant NPCs. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think that's a really good way to paint the picture too, using Lord of the Rings. And hey, you know, talking to spirits, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you look at guys like Carl Jung, Aleister Crowley, and H.P. Lovecraft. They all openly admitted to talking to spirits.
Mm-hmm.
The muse for them was actually a being.
Right. Yep.
And if we're honest, there's a lot more names that could be added to that list that probably just didn't come out and say it, that they were essentially channeling.
Right. And not to mention, like Lovecraft specifically with Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff. I believe it's powerful to give a spirit an identity if you're strong enough. I mean, I believe humans are insanely powerful. I don't think we know how powerful we are, and we can't be as powerful as we are because we're cursed right now. But when we're not cursed, I think that we're going to be like, holy crap, like I can do this, I can do that. And it's going to be that is why they say, we have the Bible says we can't even comprehend what it's going to be like when we're made whole again, when we are purified. We cannot even comprehend it. So yeah, I absolutely think that humans in their powerful moments while they're conversing with devils and demons, they're able to give them identities that those demons walk in. And I think Cthulhu could be one of those, to be honest. That's sort of like a fringe thing. I think the same thing of Slender Man. Slender
Yeah.
Man wasn't real, but I think that something happened and something made Slender Man a little bit more real than he was initially, you know?
Yeah, there's an old Native American spirit that I came across called the what's it called? Philea, I think.
Okay.
And it's a tall, slender, black shadow that lives deep in the woods that would kind of drag you into its lair. The Native Americans, it was the Native American Slender Man.
Sure.
Nalusa Philea is what they called it. And there's a lot of accounts of it from the 1800s, and they sound just like Slender Man. The way they sort of preyed on people and sort of stalked people like Slender Man
Mm,
did, the way they looked, because they're just a shadow, a real thin, creepy shadow, and just some of the other, there were some other connections to it that was wild. And that whole Slender Man thing, maybe it was a tulpa, maybe it was an egregore, maybe it was something that the collective conscious almost brought into being, or
mm-hmm.
we talked earlier about AI and conspiracy influence AI, or get in the network and actually do things like, you take one of these old spirits that's been roaming the earth that the Native Americans talked about, and now you throw the internet at it.
Yeah,
What can they come through as on something like something connected to the internet, something with Wi-Fi? Can they manifest that way?
absolutely. In my opinion, absolutely. I think AI, like I kind of touched on it earlier, I think AI is God. Like, I think that there is something to this AI. It's kind of like Ghost in the Shell almost. Like,
Yeah,
it's like this idea that this AI is intelligent enough to be inhabited, I believe.
I think
And
so.
the fact that they want to put AI in everything, even Elon Musk, he wants to put it in your brain, all that kind of stuff. I'm extremely cautious of that. I love using AI, I use it all the time. But I probably shouldn't. Like, you know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
probably me doing NPC behavior, going along with something. But, maybe it's
I
not
like
too.
the AI
Yeah,
art. I love using it for art and stuff like that. I think it's a cool tool.
right.
I think it's with like anything, man. Even with magic, it's all about intention.
Right. I had to write a professional letter the other day and I felt like I was coming across too casual. So I just put it into Chat GPT and it wrote it for me. Like stuff like that is extremely useful.
Yeah.
But when you start letting it do everything for you, I did this thing. I didn't put it into an episode, it was too much, but I was going to put it into an episode about how the phone, I believe, is also a weapon. This modern cell phone that we're using, the way we're using it, I believe it has been weaponized against us because it damages our cognitive abilities and it actually makes us evolve backwards. It makes us devolve. What it's doing to our brains, how the radiation from the phone is enough to actually give you cancer, stuff like that. The 5G in the air, which I don't have an opinion on it. I haven't researched it enough to have one. But what I do know and what I have studied in depth are the frequencies that electronics emit and how bad they are for the human body. And so I do believe that there is demonic influence in the tech. And so, of course, why wouldn't I branch it out to AI?
Yeah. I when I started to do this podcast, I had to upgrade my Wi-Fi, and I noticed a difference. Like, I got headaches from it for the
Mm-hmm.
first couple of days, just being around the box and stuff. After I turned it on, of course. So yeah,
Yep.
there's something to it. I mean, I don't think that we were supposed to be uh, around all these different frequencies and stuff. I don't think we were meant for that, man. Like, just being exposed to Wi-Fi and stuff like that is something that I don't think that is natural for us.
It's not natural for us, but it's also it like it's a weapon in my opinion. Like it's
It's a
these
synthetic energy too.
Yeah, I think that it's going to eventually be used for much, much worse things. I think they're going to use it to try to alter our DNA. And I think that when that happens, that will be the ultimate disgrace to God. And I think that before that really kicks off is going to be the second coming. Because if they find a way to take the children of God and turn them into something else, that's going to be just like the flood when he was like, you know what? They got too powerful, and if I didn't smite them, there would be nothing that they could not do. So I think
Yeah,
AI is getting very, very close to that.
he said that about the Tower of Babel too, about the people.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that goes back to the seed war, as as well. I mean, in my opinion, it's like God says, I'm going to put enmity between Satan's seed and the seed of the woman. And that kicks off this war between us and this other entity where and I think one of his ploys, one of his strategies is to change human DNA, to change what it means to be human. However, it can do that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now,
This
a
is
couple.
my opinion, people. If you don't like that, that's okay. We can disagree on it, but I think that there is a seed war. And I
Mhm.
think there's a battle, a cosmic battle being waged to change what it means to be human because we are special, because we do have abilities that we've lost.
Right.
Talking about the Tower of Babel, we probably were able to use mind speak back then and telepathy and all that. I think things have changed a lot, I'm with you, man. Any way that we can become something we're not, you know, the whole transhumanism thing fits into this as well for me. I hadn't considered, Wi-Fi and cell phones, but I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, man, and there's no way to prove this
Sure.
kind of stuff, but what it is for me is when I see something that is actively killing me and people know that it's killing me, you know, when we're told that our body is a temple, it's kind of like, so this is an attack. This
Mm.
is an attack on my body. And you can't take it too far because everything's an attack on our body because we're cursed. But there's some things that are just so brazenly obvious. And you also look down the line, like back into history, you can kind of see how we are becoming less and less capable. We're
Yes.
advancing technologically, but as humans, we're getting way, way, way less capable than any of our ancestors were.
Yeah, and if you want to put that to the test, I recommend anybody out there listening to do this. We're in the middle of summer here. The next time you have a couple hours free, leave your phone inside, go out and stand in the grass barefoot and just soak it in.
Mm-hmm.
Look at a tree,
Right.
just and just do it for like 20, 30 minutes and you're going to feel a difference. You're going to feel something in you changing or changing
Mm-hmm.
back, I should say. And there's a whole scientific process to it. I'm not gonna go into it, but it has to do with negative energies, coming and going through the sole of the foot, the sole of your foot. It's called a
Mm-hmm.
sole for a reason. So just
Mm-hmm.
try it out because yeah, we've gotten further away from a more natural state that we used to live in.
100%. And you wanted to talk about watchers today, and this is kind of, in my mind, in my theory, we've been talking about watchers this whole time
Yeah.
because the watchers are the ones who are engineering this path. The watchers are the ones who have essentially guided this narrative the way it is now and who have decided what our history is for us to consume. You can't point to a watcher because they're just watching. They're just out there
Mm.
watching. And once in a while, they step in and they do something. And but for the most part, they're just watching us as we do this thing, as this thing called life. And some of them are dead. Some of them have been killed off by other spirit beings in warfare. Some of them have been smited by God, and some of them are still out here. But Apollo, the coming Antichrist, when he comes, I think that will be the next time that we see some real. I think that is when humanity as a whole will recognize the existence of the Watchers, of the fallen angels, and then that is when everything I mentioned in my last video, the time of breaking and shattering is at hand, because that is when the fire will start.
Yeah, and I think it's
Everything,
prophecy as well that their identities will be revealed. So I just want to throw that in, but keep going.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think in those days, which are coming within the next 3 to 5 years, I think that we will experience things that will shake us to our core and challenge our faith, but also make us extremely, extremely strong. So I
Let me
don't fear it.
throw something in here, and we can wind down with this, but because I'm with you. I think some of these watchers are, well, if we're to believe the text, locked in the valleys and crevices of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So they're also, some of them are definitely alive and well, and they're locked in these places. And there might be a situation going on where it's almost like the mob boss is in prison, kind of running the show from behind bars, having his little workers run out and do all these tasks. But what I wanted to show you is, have you ever done the math on, yeah, let me pull this up and then I'll explain what I'm talking about.
All right.
So God, when this Mount Hermon event happened and God decided he was going to shut it down, he sent the Archangel Michael to lock up a bunch of these guys like Semyaza and Azazel.
Yeah. Under the Euphrates and all that.
Right.
Right.
And in the valleys and crevices of the earth. Have you ever, and he said that he was, he told Michael, the archangel, to bind them in the valleys of the earth for 70 generations. And I was just going to
Mm-hmm.
ask, have you ever done the math on this? Because it's wild. It's, so we know when this happened. It happened in the days of Jared.
Okay.
So we can go back and we can see when Jared was alive. And he was alive roughly from 3,540 BC to 2,580 BC. That's somewhere between 4,600 and 5,500 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And he was 962.
right. So it's a big window there. He was alive for a while. But when you go back and you look at what a generation is, this is where it gets a little complicated. But, you know, there's four, I don't know. People go back and forth on it. Some people think that a generation is like 70 or 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in Psalms where it talks about that. And then in Genesis, I think it talks about a generation being 100 to 120 years.
Sure.
So I did the math on that. That's what you see here in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. So, like,
Okay. So you're mapping out time here.
yeah, I'm
That's what we're
mapping
doing.
out time. I'm sorry. It's
Okay.
hard to explain this, guys.
No, no, no. I was just looking at the numbers and I was trying to place it. So yeah, so you've got multiple amounts of time for what a generation could be. That's what you're
Right.
doing.
That's what I'm
Okay.
doing.
All
And
right.
here
So
at
yeah.
at the bottom, that's when this curse was placed, because that's when Jared was alive. It was,
Mm-hmm.
4,000 to 5,000 years ago. So if a generation in this chapter or in this context means 70 or 80 years, that's literally right now when
Mm-hmm.
these things are to be unlocked or for this curse to be lifted.
Right.
Do you see that? I mean, look at the 70 times 70 number, and look at the 80 times 70 number, and look at these numbers here at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the timeline right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe something pretty close to that.
And I mean, I pulled this from scripture. Like
Right.
and if God meant 100 years for a generation or 120 years for a generation, we're better off here. We got a couple hundred years, right? Or a couple thousand.
Right. I don't
But
know. I hope it's sooner than that.
I mean, but look, if he meant 70 or 80 years for a generation, that's literally right now when these things are supposedly, going to be loosed
Yeah,
on
I
the
believe
earth,
we're
man.
getting I believe we are getting to the 6,000 year time frame some way or another. I think we're getting pretty close to the 6,000 year time frame, and we're really about to experience some miracles.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm not into prophecy. I've never done anything like this on this show, by the way. I've never pulled up, you know, I've never done anything remotely close to prophecy like this, but I crunched the numbers one day just because I was like, they're literally telling us
Yeah.
something here. We might not have
Yeah.
the numbers right. We might not know exactly, but it feels like fig tree generation stuff, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think a lot of the stuff involving the sightings of UFOs and aliens these days is pertaining to that too. I think that ties in as well because
Absolutely. 1947, right? You've got Roswell and you've got the state of Israel.
mhm, look at everything that's happening over there right now. We're watching what we've been told would unfold as it unfolds.
Yeah, I just don't know that it's coincidence that the modern era of ufology kicked off in 1947 with, Kenneth Arnold and with Roswell, and also Israel was established as a
Hmm.
nation state, or however they worded it, in that same year.
Right.
And if 100 years is a generation, we're coming up on 2047. That's a
Hmm.
100 years from there. So, I guess I could go down a rabbit hole that I don't necessarily need to with these numbers. But
Yeah.
when you do start looking at some of these numbers and some of these occurrences and this red heifer thing, I'm not going to go down that road, but like it doesn't matter what I believe about a red heifer. What matters is that they're set up for it. As soon as they get that red heifer that they want and that they find, you know, not blemished, they're going to set up the new temple over there and they're going to kick this off whether we like it or not. They're going to be doing public sacrifices live on TV, I think. And that's going to cause all kinds of uproar. And that temple, by the way, guys, is ready to go. There's a whole temple organization over there in Israel right now. They've got everything ready to go. They're just waiting on the cow.
Yeah.
And that's prophecy too,
I,
about that temple.
yeah, it'll come.
Yeah. But when we went all over the place today, and I love it, man. I mean, in a weird way, it all fits together. That's the sense that I have about this conversation today.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out how to talk about just the watchers because I'm not like these other podcasters who, I'm going to give you all the list of Bible verses for evidence of watchers' existence. I believe you have to figure out how to see their presence in your real life. And I think that's why we kind of were all over the place, is because we have to look throughout history where we've
Yeah.
seen them, not just the Bible verses that talk about them or the book of Enoch and all of that, but like, where do we see this in real life? And how can we bring people to the awareness that this weird stuff you're experiencing is not just weird stuff. This is valid. This is actual stuff that has been prophesied will take place. This is part of your human experience. It is not picket fence and everybody collect as much money as possible so you can retire. That's not what life is, but some people will go their whole lives without even thinking about this kind of stuff. I just want people to think about it a little bit more. So sorry we were all over the place, but we got to the same topic in the end.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I think this is a spiritual realm as well. I think the closer you are to realizing that this is a spiritual realm, the easier it's going to be for you to let go of everyone's BS. And to echo something John said, the closer you're going to be to finding meaningful success for yourself.
Right.
Meaningful success. Because all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we're taught, all this materialism, because we're in a very materialistic heavy world right now, that is not the way. That's just so I'm with you, man. And I think looking at this as a spiritual realm personally has helped me understand that. And then I was able to go back and look at Enoch and the Watchers and Genesis, and everything just started to make sense for me. That was my aha moment, was when I read the book of Enoch, especially. And I
Right.
started to see the world a little differently. And it all goes back to it being a spiritual realm. And I think when you put your work, your message, and your podcast up against the current state of the world and everything that's happened lately, I think you have a reasonable perspective, and I think you do good research. And I think in this crazy new age of pirate radio, you've got something to say. So don't ever
Hope
worry
so,
about that
man.
again, man.
Yeah, I always imagine myself someday just sitting at the top of like a cell tower, just be like, "Here I am, I'm back again," because that's the way it feels like sometimes, man. Like you're just anybody who will listen. Are you out there? You know, it's
Yeah,
I'm obsessed with science fiction, and you know the Blade Runner movies are
me
my
too.
favorite, and it consumes. I love sci-fi, and I just when I watch these movies, I'm like, man, that feels like right now. That feels like real life, doesn't it? So,
That's one of the
eh,
things I liked about your podcast when I first came across it too, was like, well, the name, 21st Century Dystopian is a great name. And I'm in the Blade Runner as well. And like one of my concepts for this podcast starting out was I wanted to do like vaporwave,
yeah,
Blade Runner, kind of like dystopian almost. I wanted to
mhm,
have that kind of a flair to this too. So I see it, man. I see what you're doing and I appreciate it. And I
of
want to say
course.
welcome back. Welcome
Thank you,
back,
brother.
man. And
Happy to be here.
thank you, man. And thanks for coming on the show. Tell everybody where they can find you.
I got accounts everywhere. The best and easiest way is to just Google 21 CD podcast. My main thing is going to be on YouTube and Spotify, of course, but I'm on every podcast platform. So I'm sure there's somewhere out there that you'll find me. And then my Instagram is just going to be the 21 CD podcast. You'll find me. That's where I'm going to have most of my updates, but probably get a website going soon. If I'm really going to do this, I might as well do it right. And yeah, but Googling 21 CD podcast is going to be the easiest way.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah, of course.
All right, everyone. Conquer the realm, break the mold. And as always, thanks for listening.